You guys having fun yet? Is that a yes or a no?
I'd like to share a quick fun thing that happened yesterday as I left here and was driving up the driveway. Yeah, so I'm driving out of here and this little voice, which I recognized as just a little thought voice, said, "Oh my God, how are you going to do it?" You know, not even being clear on what the it was. And then immediately I noticed that I had contracted my body. And so I thought, okay, you know, I can let this go. So I let it all go. And then this wisdom came, which was just like a wonderful pearl. I realized that if I can just stay open and relaxed and aware in every moment, I don't have to make a plan or know how to do it. It will just come, it will unfold in the moment. So I may have known that, but the experience of it was very beautiful. And of course, then last night I realized I have to let go of my idea of my relationship with Peter, and I have to let go of my attachment to Peter. That feels a lot bigger. But cool. I'm so good.
Great. And it's true, you do have to let go, but it's just letting go of the old way of relating to it.
Attaching, yeah.
And then
Grasping.
you'll get to see. For some people, they're in a place where the relationship may let go. Right? For some people, letting go in that way, it does mean letting go of, okay, I don't know if we're going to actually be together or not. You know? But in this case, it feels more like you just as you're saying, it's like you have to let go of the attachment. You have to completely let go and then see what it feels like next. So it still is the same. It's still the same in terms of complete letting go and seeing what it feels like next. But for some people, there's a deeper awareness of, actually, I think this relationship is not going to work. You know, so yeah, no, I mean, that's what I'm saying. I don't feel like that's
Not now, anyway. I realize I just don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't know really anything.
Mm-hmm. Great. Great, yeah. Thank you for sharing that. I wanted to share a little this morning. And we've been, on the one hand, we've been speaking about the exploration of self through the layers. So when we're speaking about all these emotions and meeting the conditioning and that fabric and storyline on the soul level or storyline on the God self level, we're speaking about the kind of like the manifestation, this outward expression in all this sort of rich detail. And what I wanted to do this morning was speak a little bit more about more what I experience as this vertical path, this where the experience is, and we're going to go ahead and do this as an exercise. So I'm going to speak about this a little bit, and then we're going to go into meditation and play and see what happens. So the way I experience these lenses of self, or these vehicles of being, vehicles of perception, right? That there's the mental aspect has this lens of perception. So then we are seeing out from your humanness, or you're seeing out from the soul, or seeing out, right? So that's the where consciousness rests in these vehicles and then gets to perceive and experience. And when you collapse back in and surrender back in through that cessation point, maybe I can describe it this way, that every time there's a surrendering through a lens of perception, that cessation, where there's no perceiver, there's no self, there's no knowing, there's no existence, there's no reference point, there's no will, there's no tracker, there's no nothing. There's like the experiences of like complete total annihilation. And that it's been through that process that a vehicle of consciousness, the personality or the soul, recognizes that it is actually made up. That's good. That's good. That's perfect. That's perfect. Right? You can go off and cry, or you can start laughing. Right? And so these vehicles that we take so seriously, right? There's this recognition of, oh my God, right? It's made up. It's created. So then you can't actually take yourself so seriously, you know. Do you want to try and articulate do you want to share a little?
Sure. Well, I've been going through all kinds of layers and layers and layers. The mind very much needing to organize and understand. And surrendering all kinds of different layers of things. So surrendering the sense of specialness, having to be special, all connected to like the lifetime of when I was a sacrifice and they cut my heart out, which I get it. It was special. I was chosen as a child to be this sacrifice, but I didn't expect that I was going to have my heart cut out. So there was a betrayal too. But that cutting my heart out cut me off from a lot. And then I just keep going through different lifetimes, but all these things are still in this current lifetime, just at different ways of experiencing some of the deep same emotions. And surrendering through, well, so that was a place of specialness. In this lifetime, having a father who had a lot of issues. And I spent my childhood achieving great honors in lots of things, and so he would accept me, and all he would say was, "Don't get a big head, don't make your sisters feel bad." So it was this, I got it yesterday thinking of it as a paradox, but it's no win. Because you do what he wants, and then he says, don't feel like you've even accomplished anything, you know. So there's all of that stuff, and I've been surrendering through vulnerabilities of, well, it's all connected, everything people have said, achievements and fear of awakening and what it means, and being vulnerable, and my God, if when I surrender that, I'm nothing. You know, the vulnerable fear is, what if people find out that I'm not? I'm not special. I'm not anything. You know, I'm just. So it's been fomenting. You know, like when you put garbage down the drain and it's coming up, you know, all that stuff. You know? That's what it feels like. But that getting into just continuing to surrender all these concepts, these belief systems, and I'm had many lifetimes of religious orders, and so phrases would pop into my mind from the Bible and from various things, you know, you are not one of the chosen one, or you, St. Paul, faith without works is dead, all this, you know, which is earning, achieve, you know, all this crap. So it's just been foaming, you know, all this stuff. And then I surrendered my concept of God, which started yesterday when you said something, whatever you were saying, and the concept of perfection, which is the core thing of being good enough. But my concept of God was this perfect creator, and that is like it's an end goal, like when you go to high school, you graduate. You don't have to do that again. You go to college, you graduate, which is that, and you got a piece of paper that says you've done this. And my goal-oriented life has been sort of like, there should be that plateau that you get where, everything's great, you know. And so God was like that. And it is such foolishness for man and women to think they can define God in the first place. But all this foaming is coming around
the
to
garbage disposal is definitely on.
all this foaming has come around to, well, what if God is a continuing process of this evolving, and everything being one, we are part of that. What if awakening is just like a sunflower breaking through the shell and growing and growing and growing and blossoming and blooming? And that the process is the magic and the mystery, and it's great. Anyway, so what was your question?
Well, I was curious where your laughter.
Okay, so that is absolutely in sync with this the concept of that we're made up. Because all of this stuff is made up. They're all concepts. They're all And if we're all just this energy, this light, this life, love, light, wisdom, all these things, and those are concepts too, they're just labels, but I was looking at your crystal, this one over here, and feeling it in my heart, and feeling the light and no boundaries. And so when you said that we're made up, our concept of ourself is made up, it just fit.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, thank you.
Yeah. So there are lots of different reference points of what you were sharing as a pathway in. I want to name the emotional component piece because it addresses both the personality. Well, you addressed both the personality, the soul level, and that God self level all at the same time in the way you were speaking about it. So on the personality level, there's the experience of having a life with your father where you were motivated to keep achieving and achieving and achieving to receive acknowledgement of your specialness, which was never acknowledged. So in terms of awakening, that's the perfect opportunity to surrender through the outward projection of a need for something, having it not be given, right? To break through, to see a deeper truth. On the soul level, of an experience of being special, connected with an experience of betrayal and physical trauma, and having your heart taken out, as you said, right? That there's then a deep memory of that sense of separation. But even that too, in an enlightened state, could have been experienced without the sense of separation. So it's a storyline interpretation, understandable interpretation, right? And I'm not saying that it's like, oh yeah, sure, cut out my heart, I'm fine, Like I recognize the challenge of that, and then that experience stored as the memory. So that's the soul level working out that story. God self level working out that story is in that place. I mean, in all of it, your oneness with an individual uniqueness. On that God self level, the experience of being one with God and one in that, the paradox of being oneness and being an individual expression. How do I say that? It's not a paradox. It's not linear. But it's then realized that one can live that inseparability. One can live the apparent dichotomy or paradox of being a unique fragrance, a unique sound, a unique showering of light, when everything emanating from God is light and sound and showering of fragrance. It's one emanation, but with these individuated lenses, then they get to be experienced as individual expressions. And so on that God self level, whatever misunderstanding, am I special? Am I not special? But I'm everything. But there's this uniqueness. This how am I still special? It's like everyone is special. I mean, that's the thing, is like in the deep healing of that, there's a recognition of that the uniqueness is the gift. the uniqueness can be misinterpreted as separation, which is kind of all that's happening. So I just love your sharing, because you're offering the conundrum on each of those levels, and also demonstrating that the conundrum is seamless through the whole thing, because it's one conundrum that then manifests and explores itself on all these different levels of exploration. And it still is that uniqueness then getting to have an individuated experience. And all those experiences are then the polishing. So the uniqueness, the unique flavor, fragrance, sound, light, emanation, so God as that, with the individual envelope of that lens of perception of a sense of self. God as all that, then brilliantly creating these lenses, gets to then experience its one self and taste itself. All one flavor, all one emanation, then gets to have pink taste yellow, and have flower taste mud, and have strength taste gentleness. So it gets to taste itself in all these ways, and then kind of emanates out another whole layer of being, another whole universe of itself as itself, to then taste and smell itself in all these other combinations. And you are that. You are all of that, and you're this sweet woman in purple. Right. Having this experience. And often, so I'm interested in, just in general in my teaching, supporting both, waking up through all those layers of self, because it's just ecstatic, living what we are. And I'm also interested in supporting, surrendering through those lenses of perception to the mystery of not knowing, because all of this arises out of that which you can't see, and is so far as always the unknown. In the midst of all that comes forward, right? It becomes known because the resting point of perception falls back into a deeper place, so then it has a wider scope of itself. How magical. And it still can't see back from where it comes. And so then that magical tree we can't see decides to let go again of that stem of the leaf. And consciousness then opens up back further and sees itself on even a larger scope. And oh, how magnificent. And then it still can't see back behind that. So we're this living mystery of this, what I would call everything and nothing. And I don't know how appropriate the word nothing is anymore, because it ends up being this endless mystery. At some point in this process for me, there was a waking and seeing multiple universes, and seeing them all as universities. And we incarnate into a university, right? A universe for a particular lesson plan. So there is actually I see anyway, an evolution of a soul, the maturing of a vehicle, the maturing of a God self, the maturing of a human. And that there are, when I look at everybody, I see all these different levels of mastery and learning. And there are other universes. When you graduate from one, you can go explore oneness as one singular truth through its individual expressions can then express and play with itself through another whole set of rules, a set of structures or patterns to experience itself in another whole set of combinations. So there's a brilliant perfection that just is, that's exploring itself. And so the mystery then just keeps revealing itself. So what I was interested in this morning was if I'll offer a potential visual sort of structure to play with, but I also want to just acknowledge that you can look at things a zillion different ways, and if your experience doesn't match how I'm laying it out, trust your experience, because that's where the truth lies. So my experience is of resting through what I would call the core flow, or resting through the empty center of a toroidal field. And so there's a resting as this mystery where one can't see, and yet all levels of perception, all planes of existence arise out of this. Right, it's the bigger picture. And so the visual this morning was of resting in through this core and being with the lenses, and again, this is just how I was, just the visual and the sensations were coming from me, was the personality at the bottom, that lens, the soul lens above that, each of these are the plane with the planes, manifesting out, but being present just in the center. And then with the lens of the God self, and then with the empty opening where there's no sense of self, just the mystery of that non-existence, like that comfort with everything being made up and not knowing and not existing and just being the lived mystery. And I was resting with all of those, and then resting with the collapse of all of those into themselves. So there was a central resting presence of all those lenses of perception collapse through the not knowing the mystery. So that's the first part of the exercise. And then the second part of the exercise is to, I'll share when I was resting with all that and then becoming aware that was the exercise that wanted to happen. There was also the recognition that it also felt like the mind. It had the mental frequency aspect. And so curiosity came, what about the heart? And so in that collapse, resting was that perception of all those lenses collapsed into one with the mystery of not knowing, not being, not existing. That flavor, that whole frequency, and then it felt like it somehow then dropped into the heart. And then the familiar experience that I speak a lot about of just this ecstaticness and this love of everything is what was present. So I'd love to just kind of toss that out as an outline for a meditation and see what happens. And my guides are all present to help. Your guides are all present to help, right? So open to, advanced help, right? To help support this. And yesterday, in one of our meditations, I was aware of a construction happening. It was being created in the field of our meditation, of our group. And it was like steps being made to bring you to this next level of pure infinite being, free of conditioning. And the steps were there for people to get on whichever step they were ready to step on, and then all the steps were there to so it's like that was being created yesterday in the field, which my guides and I were creating together. And then there was also the humor of that sense of self on that level getting to think that it creates something. It's like it's still all just a play. It's still all just the universe playing with itself. But that was the game that was being played yesterday during meditation, right? So another way of saying is there's just a lot of support, and there's support in all these layers of consciousness to help you open to that which you're wanting to open to.
I would like to make just a quick question. When we're doing this, and you mentioned the emotional level, how does this relate to the body?
Well, these are just the first two parts of the exercise.
Okay.
So, because usually awakening is focusing on just surrendering through, right? So we're inviting that surrendering, the sense of self, through all those layers, because it was interesting for me because I was experiencing it in an embodied way, because the way I was describing it, the core flow is in alignment with that center of the toroidal field, which I experience universes birthing out of, right? And then all these planes of existence, and that correspond with chakras and each of the dimensional bodies. When I was saying there's lots of layers, there's just this profound brilliance, profound organization. And so when I was experiencing the exercise presenting itself, I was resting as the body, in the spine, in that energetic core flow. And then feeling myself. So this is interesting. This is where then there was self-reflection of being still in a mental field, because it started out in an embodied way. And then when all those lenses of self appeared, but the experience of them was not a disembodied viewing. It was actually an embodied experience, recognition of seeing through each of those lenses as completely transparent to each other, through each other, all the way through to where there's just the mystery of not knowing, of not being, where the experience of not existing, all simultaneously. And so resting is that. It still kind of felt embodied, but there was a recognition. There was a recognition of oh wait, something's not complete. Something's not complete. And my guide pointed out, yes, something is not complete. So I rested again as nothingness, resting as the unknown, as the exercise is appearing, and then the next piece came of now have that, be with that and the heart. And so doing the exercise as it was coming, then I felt that lens of perception, right, of each of those, seeing, oh yes, that was through the mental aspect in each of those vehicles. So what happens if that whole thing then rests with the heart? So then all those layers of heart from each of those lenses, the heart chakra, love, consciousness through that central heart place, everything is love, but there's a way that we experience it through the heart. All that came into this sense of being here, this physical body, and the way that I often feel this ecstaticness of my body, of everything, this just incredible, exquisite, ecstatic, scintillating, orgasmic love fest. Which feels like the body. And then all those bodies are one's body, and then feeling that here, resting in this chair, right? So it for me, the exercise then coming into the heart through this trajectory of the exercise ended in that full sense of embodiment, where then all those aspects then collapse into themselves and are experienced. Everything is then experienced simultaneously now, here.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you so much for your question, because it also helps clarify. Yeah.
With the term toroidal field?
Again, I'm just speaking from my direct experience. So if I had a physicist here, they'd who knows what that conversation would be. I would look forward to a conversation like that. But my experience in opening up, when I started opening up as the universe and feeling these generation, the generating of planes of existence, I was experiencing myself as this massive toroidal field. That was the sense of self, the vehicle of the sense of self. And that that core flow, it feels like where everything like collapses in on both sides of the creation back into nothing, and then is generated out. So the toroidal shape is like a donut. I don't know, it's a little bit fatter. Really big fat donut. And I had a dream about donuts last night. I'm gonna go sit with that. What that one was about. Yeah, I was gonna go eat a donut with somebody. It's fun. So that shape, and like there's the flow. It's like a water fountain, right? That flows all in all directions around and comes back in, but also goes the other way. So, and there's all sorts of brilliant, things that are out there now that I just haven't studied, but I hear little bits and go, oh yeah. So there's a whole thing about the heart math or something, or this toroidal field with the heart, and these things are, so it's like there's scientific stuff that's like the degree of my understanding, right? That I hear little bits of it feels like it somehow, corroborates with what I'm sharing, but I'm really just speaking about my direct experience. So, and then, so at some point I was seeing, oh my gosh, the core flow is the center of that whole toroidal thing. So all these bodies, all then are superimposed.
And the direction of the flow in the toroidal field?
Oh, both directions. So rising up and around, and the other,
But going this way too.
Yeah.
The bodies are superimposed, like within the field, the toroidal field. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, I don't understand this stuff. So in terms of my direct experience, there's some like brilliant magical way in which everything collapses into itself, so that the macrocosm is in the microcosm, and the microcosm is within the macrocosm. So when I'm resting in myself, I literally feel the pathway between stars between my cells. Like I feel like I know the routes that beings travel in the universe. Because when you open to that next level, the information is then intrinsic because it's what you are. So you don't have to study it. It's just what you are. So I will literally, like suddenly there was this awareness of, oh my gosh, like I suddenly now know some of these routes between, stars or galaxies or, but I don't have all the right language for it because I haven't studied our science or other mystery schools or, ancient religions that were spot on and haven't lost the wisdom that was there. It hasn't gotten tangled up in dogma and stuff, So, so that's and maybe superimposed, like I don't even know it, we're holographic, or like I don't even know if that word works. But they collapse into themselves, and then it's all just present together.
So everything's in the toroidal field, or made of it.
Well, that's only as far as my vision has opened to. So what that is inside, I don't know. And when I was seeing all the different universities, I wasn't having a toroidal experience with those. I was just suddenly seeing all these universities. What actually happened in that scene was, I was like I was seeing all the like the school books that were related. In school book, I mean like the universe communicates with itself through all these images. So when you get an image and you can feel the live working image, that it's actually changing your consciousness, right? And these deeper, when people do shamanic journeys and there's soul retrieval, or like it's a place where it's another aspect of mind. So on one aspect of mind, then it was being represented as these books. And the books were all downloading themselves into my spine. So it was like, the information from that, all of these things was like downloading. But I would need to go into meditation and look in relation to the toroidal field. I don't usually go and look for things. It's more just what shows itself, what presents itself. But it seems to be, we're getting off on a little bit of a tangent. But when I had this whole experience with this ulu tree, and the ulu tree was sharing the creation of plant consciousness parallel with the creation of human consciousness, and how they both arise out of source, and how they have immune systems and ways of transferring knowledge and wisdom onto one's offspring. Right? This tree was showing me this amazing thing, and it was also showing me the toroidal field, and was showing me its fruit, saying, "Here's a toroidal field. Here's another one. Look at that." We all kind of do that, don't we? It was like this really beautiful, like kind of demonstrating the parallels, the similarities, and then the differences. So again, this is why I'm saying, like, I'm not a scientist. I mean, by far, this is just direct experience, but that it's consistent. It's consistent, and when I say that your experience, that's the truth, right? That your direct experience is going to be what informs you, and if my words and direction are helpful, hallelujah, and you may come back and report something more about toroidal fields, right? It's like, all right, great, let me know. Okay. And the other thing that this. Like each of us, as this divine exploration, gets to have a unique perspective and then talk to each other. So you, as the universe, with your unique perspective, gets to then share with the world your experience of toroidal fields, which is going to be unique in that way. So it's also just this other... It's part of the divine tasting, is to be in the authenticity of one's experience. And then going back to that specialness, each of us are unique. We're one singular totality that gets to have a unique experience. And so, so it's a beautiful happening, and I also just want to bring it back to honoring each person's experience. And then when there's confusion, right, we get to talk about it, and we get to hear and listen what sounds true, resting with that truth, meter on the inside of like, oh, and or like, I have no idea if that's true or not, or let me find out. Yeah.
I just wanted to share, when I was in second grade, walking home from school, basically was almost abducted, and I don't think it happened, but what I remember was being lifted up, and there was a van with the door open, anyway, being lifted up and starting to struggle, and then I don't remember, I forget what happened, and then the next thing I remember is just running, and there was no one around, and I ran home, threw myself on the bed, and it was my first conscious experience of an energy structure. And I just assumed some energy activated, and that's what got me out. Honestly, I really think the Shakti saved my life. But when I went home, there was the central column was so activated. I'm only in second grade. I'm like, I don't know what's normal and what's not normal. But there was a toroidal field, and so it just hit me like, in my child mind, I remember it was like a soft, fuzzy tire. It felt like there was a soft, or a donut. That's what triggered it. When you said donut, it literally felt like there was this donut structure here, and it felt like a toothpick in the center of me. Again, these are child words, right? And it was just whoosh, 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 this just... But it was a toroidal, but it was a little one. It was just like a little donut-shaped one here. Anyway, that's all. So
Beautiful.
I was like, oh yeah, it was a little mini one.
That's beautiful.
It makes sense. You see pictures, they will have people's chakras, and it will show that energy around them. I didn't know that's what that was called.
It's funny because in a certain way I'm just sharing what my experience was. And so your experience is going to be different. But I'm kind of just laying out a map and inviting you to go into meditation and see what wants to happen, knowing that there are guides around each of you who are going to help support your experience.
So let go of the idea of doing it wrong.
Oh yeah, you can't. That it's not actually possible. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I am fascinated by this being an exercise. So the mapping, the way I experienced it, was being with the transparency of the sense of self through each of these layers of consciousness. So I was experiencing myself as the core flow, as the lens of the human mind, soul perception, God self-perception, and all those lenses were completely transparent through each other. And resting with the mystery where one can't see where one is arising from. And being with all of those layers that all felt stacked in through the core flow, the way it was being experienced, and then feeling all of those collapse into themselves, into itself as one singular lens of perception that had all those vehicles and also was resting as the infinite mystery. Feeling all of those together. And then that coming and resting in the heart. When that embodied in the heart, all those lenses of perception and the mystery simultaneously as one, and simultaneously as one as the heart with the heart. So, all right. This is going to be fun. Just so you know. You raise your hand if you need more time. Okay, we'll do two more minutes. So, how did that go? Do you want to share?
It was just, it felt complete. And you could just feel being in that field. So thank you, that was pretty great.
Great. Great, thank you. Anybody else want to share?
One thing that was kind of funny was something, Nancy, about your image of the incinerator and the garbage disposal came up for me while I was doing it, because with the toroidal field and the different layers, for a part of it, I was having like a party where I was taking pieces of those layers and throwing them down the middle of the donut, and then in part the interior of the donut was like a bonfire. It was very active, so that was kind of funny. And then it got more quiet and gentle as everything collapsed, but it was a very dynamic experience.
And how do you feel now?
Lighter, and my whole body did get hot when things were being thrown.
Mm-hmm. And you look really different to me, so I'm just wondering if other people can actually see that. So that lightness, right? Like your incineration process has done a significant movement of that purification and transforming, storylines, right? Like the clarity, the expanse. There's much more light, freedom in your field.
I do feel that. So much movement was going on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You know, this is one of those things where in traditional teaching, there's a lot of focus on not getting caught up in these images and these details and, like pushing that aside. And I understand the value of that, but I also recognize the value of really explaining what's happening. And that on these different levels of mind, there are storylines being played out. There's transformation happening through the substance of these layers, and that the elements are fundamental to all of these layers, and that fire can show up in lots of different ways as its nature. Its transformative nature. It's an aspect of light. I mean, everything's light, but there's a being with that. So I just want to kind of articulate that, right? That fire can show up in lots of different ways and can be different colors because of the consciousness of the nature of the fire that serves. So, and I don't seek these things out, and I'm not inviting it's more just to acknowledge what's happening, and that when you're in meditation and these things show up, or a zillion little golden hands show up and start patching up your, something or other, that it's the universe playing. It's the universe playing. And there's always this to me feels like part of the joy of the manifestation of the universe playing with itself, evolving itself, transforming itself. And so that's the outward play, and there's the inner stillness and freedom that's there simultaneously with the gorgeousness of this play. And as you're present with this play, the system transforms, the sense of self changes, the mind, that it's the reflection of that, it shows up in your field. That I'm not saying this so clearly. Let me there are all these layers of the dreaming happening. And this is one layer of dreaming happening, and it's a divine dreaming. So I'm also inviting the enjoyment of that. I also experience all of this, the whole thing is God's dream. God is dreaming. There was a point at which I was seeing all these universes are different dreams that God is having, and we're God's 3D dream. And so this richness, it's like the rich story unfolding. So, maybe I shared too many words in that moment, but I'm just wanting to acknowledge and appreciate that in the midst of this whole thing. Yeah, thank you. And so then I had a question for you, if you were willing to describe your experience a little bit more.
When we started, it's like I saw myself level, my personality, physical level, all that. Sort of like how you describe a game board, but I said almost like a sports team, right? All my different identities and personalities were, just on the field, doing what they were supposed to be doing. And then when I got to the God level, and like I said, I was surprised at how porous it was between, because level, it sounds like an elevator. You get off at this floor and you get off at this floor. But it wasn't like that. It was more porous and between the levels. And when I got to the God level, it was sort of like, not just like the coach, but all the guides and everything that we all have were sort of like assistant coaches and everything. And it made sense how the guidance and the plays were given to these different aspects of my personality or identity, to be doing this and doing that. And different things would come in, like I have 2 sons that are just amazing, and I love them so much. But sort of their role in all of that. And then from the God level, I could even see things like their fathers, or my ex-husbands and all that kind of stuff, sort of in their role, and sort of as the oneness of the whole picture of what was going on. And then when I got to the being level, it's like everything was perfect. Everything made sense. It all just fell into making sense. And it was funny, it was like, oh, am I going to do it wrong? And you get to the end, and it all collapsed, and I moved it to my heart, and then I felt being in the field, and like right after that I felt I'm complete. And then you said, is everybody done? Okay. So that's kind of it.
And just for, even though I'm sort of making up terms, what you're describing as the God level, I'd say that was the soul level.
Oh, that's still on the soul level?
That's the soul level. Because
Okay.
you're seeing all the details of individuals and lifetimes and the relationships and all those things.
Okay.
Where the God self level is a totally different playing field of creating worlds and
see, maybe I'm just not there yet.
Oh yeah, no, I'm just wanting to like in certain terms of naming the mapping.
Okay.
For yes, that place that you are feeling, that feels like opening up on the soul level, and it's going to feel much bigger than the personality
Because
level.
that directs.
Exactly. That level of orchestration of that is going to be seen and felt on the soul level.
And so what I felt as the level of being, is that more the God level, and I just didn't get to the level of being yet?
My sense is that what you experienced was perfect for what was needed in this moment, and that the beingness is your level of the integration that's wanted right now, for you to rest in that beingness and to feel that fullness there.
Mm-hmm.
So my suspicion is that it wasn't appropriate. It wasn't what was on your list for today's exercise to bump up into that God self level.
And just briefly, for this whole week, it became apparent to me there was kind of something that happened before I came, that my mission this week is like non-attachment,
Mm-hmm.
and how you talk about surrendering into, just keep surrendering. And so I, even just stuff like where you sit, we get so habituated, let's say, and so I sort of made a commitment that when I go back, I'm not ever going to be in the same place in a yoga studio. I'm going to try to move around just to be mindful of my attachment, and hopefully just that being mindful will help me to start realize how attached I am to thoughts, programs, conditions, stuff in the external world, all those kinds of things. Because I really need to.
Just because this has been my trajectory doesn't mean that it's anyone else's trajectory in terms of awakening and full realization. So you're experiencing or not experiencing what I'm calling the God self level is irrelevant. It's irrelevant. It's, people can be resting as their personality and just brilliantly wake up. And they're not experiencing all these other things that are also present. It's not it's not about an achievement or a goal or trying to access these things that I'm speaking about. Because the whole thing all collapses into itself and everything is simultaneous, the opening to the mystery is present everywhere. And that's ultimately this seeing through the lens of oneself. You don't have to see through all to these layers I'm speaking about. It's just the exercise that was present for today. It's part of what I offer that's different, is there is that consciousness and fluidity through that, so it's what's being offered. But by no means is it the end goal, or is it even necessary. So what seems essential in awakening is seeing through the lens, is recognizing that what you're viewing through, who you think you are, the vehicle of being, is actually made up. And that's just discovered at every single level. So it's not that, if you evolve more, you'll then get to the God self level. Right? I'm not saying that. I want to be really, 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 really clear about that. So the truth is here. The truth is everywhere. The truth is here. The truth is here. Right? You don't have to go anywhere. So resting in beingness is perfect. And you've had the experience of some of that expansion of opening to yourself on another level, where you can then start to see, look at that, all this stuff makes sense. Which can create a greater sense of ease and a greater willingness to let go. Because if you can see, oh my gosh, all this makes sense, it's all perfect. Phew, there's nothing you have to fix. There's nothing wrong with you. There's nothing to fix, there's nothing wrong with you. Right? And then it creates a greater openness of that deeper letting go.
Well, and to release regret about this or that and everything.
Whatever the storylines are, right? Right. Right, or like, oh God, I screwed that one up. Like, oh no, actually, that was perfect.
Not quite there for some things. Work in progress.
Well, but that's what's also the whole perfect unfolding. That's just the divine tasting that's happening. And you just had what it sounds like an experience of recognizing that everything was perfect. Were those what your words were? So when you open back to that, to tasting that truth of yourself, see what happens with the work in progress. How does the work in progress actually, what does that look like in relation to, everything's perfect?
Acceptance, self-love.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you. So, and then there's nothing to do. There's just this simple resting as that. Perfect unfolding. And it sort of brings me back to the sharing this morning of this question of is God just like a flower that's growing and then blooming? You know, that I would say is God's dream. And that we are that 3D dream of being born and growing and blooming. And that's just the maturing. But there's perfection all along the way. And so there's nothing wrong. Thank you.
It felt like I started actually in a very expanded space while you were talking about it and describing the exercise. I just started to expand and drop into some really lovely space. And so then I thought, okay, central channel. And there seemed like, there was a flow. And then I had in mind lenses. Sometimes I have a hard time remembering things like that. So I was surprised that I could remember that much even. And so on the personality level, just a couple of things, just like neon signs went, and I went yes, and just sort of infused them with willingness, and then it seemed like I could flow on. So then I was like in this flow, and it went up to the next level, to the soul level, and I thought, okay, I'm never good at past lives, so I just have to relax and wait. So I'm still in that expanded space, and I'm just waiting. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, emerges this gorgeous guy on a horse. And I just know that he's been someone of privilege who's gotten everything he wanted, and everyone was always praising and giving accolades, and there was no learning whatsoever about belonging, or I don't know, there was just no learning in that lifetime. And maybe something else happened, I don't know, but anyway, that was that. Wow, that was interesting. I did have a thought about the relationship to being an only child and never having to learn to deal with anybody else. And I just rested, continued resting, and then it felt like the flow pulled me up to the next level where I just rested in peace, I think. Maybe something did happen, but I don't remember it. It just felt extraordinarily expanded and connected and beautiful. Just a beautiful space. And I waited. Nothing else happened. And then I thought, well, this is wonderful. I like it here. So I stayed there for a while, and then I felt like I had to move on, and so I collapsed them all. And that just happened very easily. And then they just sort of disappeared, and I sort of pulled it all down into my heart. I'm not sure I felt an expansion in my heart or not. Maybe it was already expanded. I don't know. I don't know. And when I opened my eyes, even now, there's a little less since I'm moving my lips. There's extraordinary clarity and presence. And it's beautiful.
Sometimes when we've sometimes there are lifetimes that are not about work. I don't know if you had judgment about that life or if it was just an observing. But sometimes then you get a life it's like a resting life, where one has had lots of growth with challenging lives or challenging experiences, and a life. It's just a gift of getting to have a life that's easy.
So that's the guy on the horse who had everything.
I would assume.
No problems.
I would assume.
So it was really my mind making the interpretation something was wrong. Which
Right.
is one of the things that came up on the personality level, interestingly enough.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
So another way of saying, oh no, that life was actually earned.
Nice. Oh, I like that. Yeah.
So, yeah. Right, sometimes we see people having those, hey, how come they get that, you know? Or it might look like that, but it really isn't. But sometimes, occasionally, right, someone's having one of those lives, you know? So, we all get them. We all get them. So, beautiful. Yeah, I've never done this. Yeah, you're welcome. Done this before, so I'm curious, like, how it worked for people. And
the meditative state was profound. It was so deep. I was more embodied. I was occupying more of my body. I don't know how else to say that. Sounds kind of weird, but
no, it's perfect. In terms of all of these layers kind of collapsing in, we do occupy more of our body. You know, even though it was kind of extreme and talking about the spaces between galaxies, feeling those pathways between my cells, then there's an embodiment of the universe, so that you occupy more here, because they are holographic, superimposed, whatever. They each contain the other. So there is a deeper level of embodiment. And the other piece I'll say about this is that the body, the physical body, is a reflection of these other layers of consciousness. So if there's something being explored, the physical body will manifest in a way that reflects that exploration. And as those stories are resolved, as that exploration completes and exploration begins elsewhere, you know, or starts to focus more elsewhere, the physical manifestation changes. And I've been experiencing significant changes in the body and in the brain throughout this process. And as this embodiment continues, the structures then start to shift as a reflection of that larger embodiment. So yeah, so I love your, you know, it's like the sort of end result, right, of opening your eyes and feeling incredible presence and clarity, and that you're inhabiting yourself more. Yeah, that's what it's all about. Yeah.
I had a sort of all morning. I've had a whole collection of things that seemed to fit together, that came together actually in the conversation after this, that I sort of saw them all together. But the experience itself, I didn't spend a lot of time on the planes. It was like I saw them, and then I experienced this flowering of the torus. And it was just brilliant. And when it became even more brilliant was I realized it goes both ways. And when I let it do both, it was like everything came alive. I mean, it was just amazing, brilliance, radiance. And then I brought it down to the heart and felt it there. And that was the whole experience up until the last minute, I think, when this suddenly arose in me, these things I've been talking about yesterday, and I thought, well, the competence thing is gone, and the planning thing is gone, and the being overwhelmed by people was like, well, maybe that could go too. I'm not sure that's completely gone, but it was really funny. It all happened in like the last minute. And another thing I noticed in the process was that my posture was feeling different. That I felt it very hard to stand up straight. You know, burdened in some sense, I'm sure, in an emotional way, and that seemed to shift as well. And then when you were talking about God's dream and the layers, I realized many years ago I did a lot of dream recall, and I started having what I call double dreams and triple dreams, where it would be almost like you're looking at a stage set and there'd be one play going here, one play going here, and another play going here. And I think that's what it was about, because I remember one dream in particular where people were going on a journey. And then at the dream above, there was a layout of a path in a field, and it was like the map of the journey, kind of, you know. So that all came together. And then I had a dream last night which was very vivid, and it illuminated sort of the central issues of my life right now. And I woke up from that, and I thought I have no fucking idea what to do with any of these things. They just sat there. And so I thought, well, I guess I have to surrender into that. I was telling Jose the dream on the way up here this morning, and I feel like, okay, maybe that's what I need to do. So it was just this melange of stuff, all of it coming together in this morning. So I don't know what to do with it all, but it's all there. So.
I'll experience that, like all these different levels of self dreaming, the stacks of dreams, same thing, right? Just dreaming, you know, and that the right, if one wants to keep pointing backwards, so who's dreaming? The you that's aware of the three dreams. Right, surrendering back further.
Yeah, that's helpful. I never knew what to do with it. I used to ask people, have you ever had double dreams or triple dreams? They'd be like, what? So, I was so helpful with it.
Right. Oh, that's great. Yeah, when I was looking at the room of, okay, can we end yet, you know? And, Tonita and you were the two people that I was seeing, like, oh, no, you're still in it. So I just, like, kind of kept waiting, and then I saw, okay, you look like you're done. Almost, let me just ask, you know? And then we had two hands come up over here, so I was tracking your, you know...
I have never experienced any toroidal fields, or whatever you want to call them. Neither did I did today. Nothing spectacularly new happened, other than just additional, like every day, subtle increased expansion. And I was glad to hear when you said you
clarify the fact that the truth is, and that you never have to have any experience whatsoever to be wherever you have to be or wherever you are. So, and then a question: when you said that you see where people are, for instance, you saw me or whoever in some kind of place, or given you structures you gave where they are, depending where what I felt or what I saw or did not see.
What I meant when I was saying that to Lynn was that I was just looking around the room and seeing if people had completed their process. So I'm seeing I'm seeing the parts of their brain that are working, and seeing the activity, and that it's not complete in that moment. Yeah, I know it's a wild thing. I mean, the questions are useful because then it also it just brings out more for me to then articulate, because there are other things that I'm maybe seeing in a different moment, and I'll describe it differently. So, like in the sharing about these different levels, I was seeing, oh yeah, it was opening to the soul level, which is amazing. 90% or 99, I have no idea what percent of the population that doesn't open to that. Right, so that is a significant, beautiful expansion to experience, and that was the level. It wasn't this other thing. So just sort of naming, it's like naming the mapping can be really, really useful. So the way I was seeing in this case was different than what I was saying that I was seeing. It's like I wasn't looking at the way her brain was functioning and seeing the activity and that there was completion. I was seeing what she was speaking about. I was seeing her experience and seeing what that looked like. So it's different in different moments what I'm saying when I say I'm seeing something. So, but did that answer your question, or is there actually another?
Yeah, no,
okay.
No.
Okay. Yeah. So is there anything else you want to share?
Delight. When I'm looking at this, delight. And I don't even try to experience toroidal fields, because I don't know. But the core flow, I haven't any idea whether I experience core flow either. However, I do something that I associate with core flow when you say core flow, which is what I do with a lot of things that you say. I don't know, but it feels like this. So I'd start with core flow, and then you were still talking, and then you mentioned heart. And I said, oh yeah, heart. So then it's core flow and heart. And then it's the feeling of open heart, loving heart. And then it's like, what do I do now? So I said, guides, help. And I'm saying, at the same time I'm saying, guides, help. I don't know where those fucking guides are. And oh yeah, actually, before I said that, it's like open heart, and there's expanded heart too. It's like the heart is like big. Anyway, so that's, and the chest is also big. I have to make sure I don't. But then I say the guides, and so then what comes, this is so familiar really, is from last night when I was sitting on the thing out there, and I was in a horrible, horrible place. And then I suddenly woke up, and there's all the plants, the leaves of the vines and so on, just dancing away, as well as all the objects too. They're all just dancing with delight. And I said, "Oh, yes." And then delight and dancing, and then it just kind of shifted into it's a kind of white light, but it's not like smooth light. It's like it has texture. Anyway. And that's all there is. It's just this light, and so I say, "Oh, okay, let's bathe in the light, yeah." And then, of course, I say, "Okay, I'm a bit bored with this. What next? What am I going to do with this?" I mean, I feel totally silly when I say these things. I mean, but anyway. And then I say, "Okay, well, use it. Use the light." And I kind of go someplace, but then I kind of come here. I say, "Oh, okay, yeah. We're doing a healing. Kristin's doing a healing. I'll just add in my little bit." And so I just take the light to everybody. And the one, there's many, but anyway. And I come to you, and kind of come to Mary, and I say, "Oh, she's love. She's love." And it's just kind of, and then I kind of go on, and that's pretty much that's all.
The one thing I'm drawn to respond with is what do I do with this? And that it's not necessarily that the sense of self goes away, but that sense of self is seen through. So all those that play can still happen. And if I point to what's essential in terms of the seeing through, that the one who then says, "Oh, this is boring, what do I do next?" that one can be seen through even as it's saying that. So it might still be the universe plays that way, but that itself is seen through as a created dance. That is dancing just as much as everything else you are looking at. That is the divine dance dancing itself. And seeing through that lens, recognizing that is created. And the other piece I'll add, and this relates to various things that people were saying. It seems to me that as the conditioning dissolves from that lens, then what's interesting and the thoughts that appear start to change, what becomes interesting. So it may be that 5 years from now, as consciousness continues to play with itself and purify itself, that the thoughts of being bored don't show up. Or maybe they still do. I don't know. But and it may be that I keep coming back to this in my sharing, because I do share so much about the expression and the multiplicity and the exquisiteness of it, that I don't want to, in my teaching, distract from this deeper core truth that's fundamental, which is that every lens being perceived through is made up. Every lens created is just a creation of arising from the mystery. And so this essential, fundamental realization of the one that's asking or being bored, to see through that.
I noticed last night because Peter had talked about meditation, and I noticed last night that there was nothing I could do. I couldn't do this. The only thing open to me was to kind of go sit. And so I went and sat. There's no choice really, because this was the path, so to speak. And so then when I'm sitting and just being there with the current reality, with what's seen, I often, usually at those times, I have my eyes open. But there's not so much seeing going on as it's just with what's there, and it's kind of like holding the things, and it just goes on. I mean, I am responding to what you said, and it just kind of goes on, and I, thinking of Peter, I said, well, there's no stopping these thoughts, that's for sure. Anyway, and feelings, and it's just kind of going on, and then at some point, which I don't even know, I suddenly like opened my eyes and saw this dance in front of me. Whew. And so I don't know if this is my process, except that this is not the first time, but this was just a really good example. It's like, oh, you know, gee, being bored. I guess, what is it? What you've said? I guess the joys of hanging out there in boredom are still greater than, it's time for it to go. So I'm guessing that I will be well, I don't know what's going to happen, because when I start to say that, there's something hanging by a thread, and the thread could let go at any time, is really how it is. I was wondering if it would let go right there, although I didn't have the story.
And the boredom doesn't have to go. You can still enjoy boredom. It's just that there's a recognition that the enjoyer gets seen through.
Well, I have been thinking about that, the enjoyer getting seen through. And I kind of look for the big bang. But in my experience, it's like I mean, the light came. There was just the light. And then I came back. And it's the same, the dance. There is just the dance. It's not as if I has disappeared or not disappeared or anything. It's just, there is just this dance, which wouldn't happen unless I were there, but there is just dance. And so I said, I think the wiser way to look at this is, don't expect a big bang. Just let go and be there with, in its time, it'll go. And it won't even be noticed, because it's just another part of doing things. So,
thank you.
I'm totally wriggling with embarrassment. Why are you looking at me that way?
So I would share more, but I'm aware that Celeste is holding off on making lunch. So it's just a little past noon. So we can see if there's more things to respond later. Well, we'll see. So thank you so much for all your sharing and for your presence in the exercise. And